in the news
For 11/17/2023, my sister's birthday.
shout out to your sister. Go to reparationsnowdoc.com. That's reparationsnowdoc.com to get all access to watch the reparations behind the scenes and much more.
The theatrical release of Reparations Now, the documentary, is also available to stream on Tubi TV.
Get your merch at etmmediagroupstore.com. That's etmmediagroupstore.com.
And for all of your Amazon holiday shopping, please access the ETM Amazon affiliate link prior to filling up your cart. And that way we get a little kickback for each purchase. So you can help us. Way to help ETM out, doing what you love to do anyway.
2024 Reparations Manifestations Planner, Cut the Check, is available. So go to amazon.com to get yours right now.
And don't forget to access that ETM Amazon affiliate link for all your Amazon purchases. All right, let's get into it.
Let's do it. So it looks like Congress approved a temporary funding and pushes the fight over the federal budget into the new year, ending the threat of a government shutdown until after the holidays. Congress gave final approval to a temporary government funding package that pushes a confrontation over the federal budget into the new year. The Senate met into Wednesday night to pass the bill with an 87-11 tally and sent it to President Joe Biden for his signature one day after it passed the House on an overwhelming bipartisan vote. It provides a funding patch into next year when the House and Senate will be forced to confront and somehow overcome their considerable differences over what funding levels should be. The spending package keeps government funding at current levels for roughly 2 more months while a long-term package is negotiated. It splits the deadlines for passing full-year appropriations bills into 2 dates, January 19th for some federal agencies and February 2nd for others, creating 2 deadlines where there will be a risk of a partial government shutdown.
I'm sure they'll figure it out in the 11th hour as usual. All right. The Sacramento Bee recently wrote an article. This is dated November 16th. A dozen reparations bill await Newsom. Is he putting off his day of reckoning? And just make note that this is an opinion piece. And, with opinions, everyone has one. Government Gavin Newsom in 2020 put out a press release when he agreed to establish a task force to recommend how California should repair its significant role in country's enslavement of descendants of Africa and decades of discrimination that have ensued since emancipation. For a governor who craves the camera, an announcement by press release can signal a degree of distance from the subject. It is a pattern that appears to hold true to this day, as members of the California Legislative Black Caucus are preparing a historic package of reparations legislation to introduce next year. They also have yet to meet with Newsom on what they are doing. Another opinion piece related to the article. In recent months, the governor has found time in his schedule to fly to Israel to discuss the war in Gaza and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He has traveled to China to discuss climate change with President, how do you pronounce that? Jinping? Jinping?
I think it's she or G. Or
G?
she, something like
G?
that.
Ain't nothing but G thing?
Something
Xi
like that.
Jinping? All right.
She or Chai or something. Shy, she. Chi. I think it's Chi. Xi Jinping.
Xi.
I could be wrong, but
Xi
something like that.
Xi Jinping. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. We'll go with that. He found time to appear on Fox News and discuss reparations with Sean Hannity of Fox News, but not yet with the California Legislative Black Caucus. Both may be perfectly content to delay engaging one another until later, but this holds great risk for Newsom. It has been more than 4 months since the final report was issued by the task force to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans. The governor decided to open perhaps the most serious of American moral issues. A hands off approach in Sacramento can't possibly bring closure. Quote, we have not sat down with him yet, end quote, said Senator Stephen Bradford, a Democrat from Gardenia, a member of the Reparations Task Force and the Black Legislative Caucus. That moment is expected to happen sometime next month, he said. This caucus is sitting on its hands in the meantime. This caucus isn't sitting on its hands in the meantime. Its members are preparing to make reparations a key issue in Sacramento for the remainder of Newsom's term. And that's the first half of the article. I'm just going to go ahead and continue reading the article in its entirety. Again, it is from the SAG-B, and if you click the link, you just might hit paywall. So we'll just finish reading this up. Quote, we are working right now on a 3-year plan to tackle things that we think are the most pressing, end quote, said Assemblywoman Lori Wilson of Suisun City, the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. This is a 12-member caucus, and she said she expects each member to carry a separate bill next year. Both Bradford and Wilson declined to provide much detail, which is understandable given how the plan is still in formation. Both were hopeful of the governor's support. Bradford did provide a signal that the history of the movement may shape its future. Quote, reparations in its original creation was not about cash, end quote, he said. Quote, it was about land. So I want to see how we can help African Americans who are descendants of chattel slavery, who've never owned homes here in California or anywhere in this country, become homeowners, end quote. Wilson expects to brief the, quote, big three, end quote, Newsom, Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas, and Senate Pro Tem designee Mike McGuire sometime in December. Quote, we're not looking for the blessing of the three, but we're looking for collaboration, end quote, she said. In a relatively little commentary Newsom has made about the subject, he seems well aware of polling that suggests that the majority of Californians are not supportive of cash payments to slave descendants. In his June interview with Hannity, Newsom said, quote, I put out a statement saying reparations is more than just about money. That implies a deeper rationalization of what's achievable, what's reasonable, and what's right. And that's the balance that we'll try to achieve, end quote. If the deeper rationalization of reparations that Newsom has in mind would avoid the concept of compensation entirely, it appears that Bradford has something else in mind. Quote, if you are talking about cash payments right now, no, I don't see that as the first feasible step, end quote, said Bradford, who enters his final year in the Senate due to term limits. Quote, I think first it's standing up the infrastructure. How do you administer and how do you determine and identify those individuals who are eligible for reparations, end quote. This is only a 12-member caucus. It takes 21 senators to approve a bill, 41 in the assembly. Quote, our goal, end quote, said Bradford, is 21-41 and a governor's signature, end quote. For Wilson, quote, it's important for us not only show progress, but be unified in that progress. We know that there will be fights when it comes to reparations, but we want to eliminate those as much as possible. How do we as a caucus repair the years of discrimination, racism, marginalization? How do we repair divestment in our communities? Reparations is a legacy issue both for the 2024 California legislator and a governor heading into the final stretch of his second term. It is not too late for Newsom to take a hands on approach and see through what he started. There was once a time in California that a baby born from a woman in slavery was a slave as well. Our hands are not clean. The need to repair is real. And this editorial represents the opinion of editorial boards at the Sacramento Bee, the Fresno Bee, the Modesto Bee, the Tribune in San Luis Obispo, and Merced Star. The story was published on November 15th. So there you go, a little bit of insights to what they're thinking on a reparations. It doesn't sound like, cash is the king of these conversations.
Yeah, I just wanted to put up what Bradford mentioned real quick. I'm sure everybody who listens to our broadcast on Sundays, we always mention the 41 assembly, 21 senators, and 1 governor equals California reparations. It's interesting that Senator Bradford actually mentioned that in the article. So hopefully the message is getting out there. We need to keep pushing this message.
Yes, the reparations equation.
The reparations equations here in California. So it's unfortunate, but I actually, on the other side of it, want to say that, because I know there are some of us, or I've heard to the rumor mill that, Bradford doesn't support cash payments. So far, according to the article, he never said that it wasn't about giving out cash payments. So I think that needs to be clear.
Right. He said it's not a first feasible steps, if we want to quote the article there, and wants to concentrate on housing. But housing is not like a one, size fits all situation for everybody that's due reparations. So I don't know how they're going to, work out that and make it, reparations across the board for everybody that deserves it. Here are the eligible community here in California, whereas cash is definitely one size fits all, something everybody can use, and no matter where you are in the spectrum.
Right. So I mean, don't want to put words into his mouth. We're just basing on what's been said publicly right now. Definitely, as the international law for reparations says, without compensation, it isn't reparations, right? So that definitely needs to be taken into consideration, obviously, as the reparations legislation moves forward.
So family, you know who to call. Them 12 CLBC members.
Yep. And your district members. And if you're even outside of California, call somebody. Maybe even the governor. All right. Russia allocates more than 1/3 of its 2024 to 2026 draft federal budget to defense spending. Russia's State Duma approved the draft federal budget for 2024-2026 in its second reading. The budget includes an approximately 3% reduction in classified expenditure from 30% to 26.8% of all spending, reports the outlet RBC. The budget's national defense section accounts for the bulk of its redistribution. The unclassified portion of the budget has increased by 725 billion rubles, around 8.1 billion, of which 305.26 billion rubles, around 3.4 billion, will be allocated for the purchase of goods and services for the state's needs in the defense sphere and for military's social security. Another 370 billion rubles, or 4.1 billion, will go toward paying personnel in the armed forces. The Telegram channel Fairy Daily, run by journalist Farida Rostamova, and Maxim Tovkalo. Note that the authorities plan to spend more than 14 trillion rubles, for 147 billion, on defense and law enforcement in 2024, accounting for around 39% of all federal spending. Rustamova and Tovkalo called it the most militarized budget in Russia's modern history.
Mm-hmm. As government invests billions in infrastructure, advocates say, quote, it cost, quote, to sideline Blacks, other minorities. As California and the federal government invest trillions of dollars in infrastructure projects, advocates say there's a cost for not guaranteeing equitable racial and ethnic participation in contracting as firms are hired to carry out the necessary work. In California, many of the firms owned by Blacks and other minorities qualify as historically underutilized businesses, a U.S. Small Business Administration certificate that prioritizes companies in the procurement process. Quote, inequity costs everybody, end quote, said Ingrid Meriwether, a member of the Equity Infrastructure Project EIP Advisory Council and CEO of Meriwether and William Insurance Services. Meriwether told California Black Media, quote, things cost more because you don't have enough competition. In public contracting, they award businesses on lowest responsive bidder, end quote. She said, quote, when you have fewer people competing, people are paying more. With tax dollars involved, we are all paying more, end quote. Meriwether and other advocates are working to ensure more Black-owned and other minority-owned firms gain from California's upcoming taxpayer-funded infrastructure projects through government contracts. In California, where more than 99% of all businesses are designated as small business and 45% are minority owned, advocates stress the importance of fair contracting, according to the California Office of Small Business Advocate. All right, so we have a couple of links if you wanted to take a screenshot of this slide here. One to the Equity First Infrastructure Project, another to the U.S. Small Business Administration, where you can find more information about some of these infrastructure government-funded projects and, you know, how you can get involved. Now, Moya, you're a little bit familiar with the procurement process at the state level.
Yeah, I know you can't see me, but I'm smiling right now.
You are.
Yes, I'm smiling. Like,
you got a big fat contract you can tell me about?
Yes, the big fat contract. Not. So yeah, it's a you know, it's very interesting because the procure process, the e-procure process, is not. I think one thing is it's a little confusing actually trying to bid for these contracts. It's very vague. I mean, they do give some proposal requirements for the particular bids, but then like when you go for the bids, you're like, okay, did I do this exactly right? And then you really don't hear feedback from them. So yeah, the process, I think I bid currently for one project. It was like a graphic design project, and the feedback was very vague. Even though I had the information in there, I guess it wasn't the way that they wanted to have it. So I was just like, okay, maybe I need to just restructure and then resend it again. And then actually I saw them post the proposal or the bid up again after it closed out the first time. So I don't know what's going on, but the process is what it is. I mean, I think the one thing I would definitely like to see, and I don't know if this can be passed through legislation, is if they have some just kind of an estimate of kind of what the budget they're looking for.
Yeah,
You know
something
what
to
I'm
go
saying?
on.
Because it's just like, oh, okay, um, whoever places the highest or lowest bid, and then we'll see what. That's like, what is that about? You know, it's kind of weird. You don't go for a job, and then the job says, okay, well, we don't know what we're gonna pay you.
Right, and
You know?
California actually has laws about that, or a
Yeah.
law that says that employers need to list on the job announcement what the salary or salary range is. So that should be appropriate in their own contracting as well. But maybe some of these links to the equity and infrastructure project, there might be some help in understanding the procurement project. We all definitely need to get educated in it. I know we have sat in on a couple of webinars about the procurement process, and what I was surprised to find out is that you these are based on reimbursements. You come up with the money up front, and then you get reimbursed. You submit your invoices and get reimbursed for that work, labor, or services or product. um, and I found that to be interesting. They're like, yeah, so if you see people get these $2 million contracts, just know they've got the money up front.
Mm. All right. There's an article. This was actually an older article earlier on this year, in January 18th, but I think it's just good to mention because there's, excuse me, there's the BEAD program. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's a federal government program. It's like broadband equity something. Um, that's actually funds actually being distributed to each state through federal dollars. So, um, I think it's important that we're aware of this because I know a lot of our, family, Black American descendants, um, actually don't have access to the internet, right? I mean, some of us actually might need to go to the library if it's close to us to get access to the internet because you know getting internet is really expensive. So anyway, let me not belabor the point. Let's get right into this article. The digital divide was first recognized in the mid 1990s. 3 decades later, due in part to long-standing economic inequity and the economics of broadband, it remains an impediment to inclusive economic growth, particularly in Black American communities. Approximately 40% of Black American households, as opposed to 28% of white American households, don't have high-speed fixed broadband. In dense urban areas such as Chicago and Baltimore, Black households are twice as likely as their white counterparts to lack a high-speed internet subscription. In the rural South, 38% of Black households don't have broadband, compared with 23% of white households. But broadband access is only part of a much bigger picture. Ensuring all Americans can fully participate in civic life and digital economy requires affordable subscriptions, internet-enabled devices, applications, digital skills, and high-quality technical support. For example, while smartphone and tablet penetration are approximately equal among white, Black, and Hispanic and Latino adults in the United States, only 69% of Black Americans and 67% of Hispanic Americans have desktop or laptop computers, compared with 80% of white Americans. A 2020 OECD survey found that roughly half of Black workers had the advanced or proficient digital skills needed to thrive in our increasingly tech-driven economy, compared with 77% of white workers. So there you go.
Yeah, and we don't have the article for it, but I did see a headline saying that Eric Adams out there in New York, one of the areas that he decided to cut in the budget, you know, to accommodate all the migrants that they need to, house and things. Where the libraries, they're going to be closing the libraries on the weekends now, so that's even less access.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we'll get that story, see if there's any updates for you on that next week. But yeah, libraries are one of the areas that people are, you know, um, shaving resources from. So it's more important than
Wow.
ever, right? And then I don't know. I mean, we don't have an article or anything about this, but the digital divide, there's also going to be dollars coming out attached to that.
Yep. There is.
Whoop, there it is. Okay, what there weren't many dollars attached to. Let's see. Terrence Howard has come out, reflects on being paid $12,000 for starring in Hustle and Flow. Terrence Howard claims to have not been fairly compensated for his role in Hustle and Flow. Speaking with WREG's Alex Coleman on Live at 9, the 54-year-old said he was paid a small amount for his role in the drama. We have a video to go along with that. Let's see what he had to say about that.
I want to get rid of the unions. SAG has done nothing. Check this out. I made $12,000 for doing Hustle and Flow. And then on top of it, what Paramount did, instead of putting my name as Terrence Howard performing the songs, they put performed by DJ. Well, they own DJ. So guess what? The performance royalties went to Paramount. Wait a minute. They didn't go to Terrence Howard. They went to $12,000. That's all I ever made from Hustle and Flow. Everything else went right back into Paramount. So now I got to sue Paramount or send them a letter.
Are you serious?
I got to send them a letter to say, hey, you guys owe me about 20 years worth of residuals and performance royalties. But I didn't know. I was just trying to pay my rent then. I made $6,000 doing Crash. Crash didn't.
I remember the movie Crash. Yes, that's right. That's right.
The business don't pay actors anything. That's why the strike is going on. Actors are struggling.
As you and I were kind of joking earlier, it's hard out here for a pimp.
Yeah, it is hard.
All right. So the article goes on to say Hustle and Flow was released in 2005 and starred Taraji P. Henson, Ludacris, and Anthony Anderson alongside Howard, directed by Craig Brewer, and produced by the late John Singleton and Stephanie Elaine. The film earned $22 million at the box office. According to Howard University News Service, Brewer, Allen, Howard, Anderson, and DJ Qualls claimed Singleton, who used his $2 million of his own money to help fund the project, owed them. At the time, they said they were promised a portion of the film's profits. Elaine sold her home to afford living expenses during the film's 22-day production process in Memphis. In 2011, Singleton filed a lawsuit against Paramount for $20 million, claiming the studio did not fulfill its end of the deal per the Los Angeles Times. So this movie is a big blockbuster, makes $22 million, and the main character only got paid $12K.
All right, so we gotta play both sides of the story now, right? I mean, first of all, $12K, that is actually quite ridiculous. However, I don't know, did they have the budget in here? I don't know if they said the budget was in here. I mean, $22 million for a major studio release isn't actually a lot. I'm just playing the other side of the coin, but it's more than, what the average person makes, right? So, we have that point. And then on top of that, John Singleton actually put up his home, his equity, I guess, or something like that.
Well, he put up $2 million of his own money, but this other person, Elaine, who was also a producer that they mentioned in here, Stephanie Elaine, sold her home and to afford living expenses. So
Yeah. So, I mean, there was a lot of money put up for this movie. And look, it is what it is when you're investing in something. However, Paramount has the money. Let's not front
right.
and say that, this is a major motion picture studio company. They can afford a lot of a lot. They hire thousands of people. Um, and yeah, so this is ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah,
I
and it
don't
doesn't
know,
even sound like he's talking about an additional cut. I mean, at least in this article, it sounds like, or what he was saying is that he wants the 20 years worth of residual and royalties, which I'm sure that adds up as well. Beyond the 22 million that it made at the box office. So
Yeah, it just depends. I mean, if he actually was the one, and I don't know, but I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking, say like he is the one who wrote the lyrics, right? And there wasn't a contract. Like, you need to have all these agreements in place, because technically, right, depending on how the contract is set up, if it's music, right, there's actually a music license that needs to be applied to the contract. So if he actually has the writer's credit, I'm not talking about for the film, but for the track or the recording itself, whoever has the rights to that, he definitely needs to get royalties, because that goes to the record label or the publishing. So you have your masters, which is the record label, you have the publishing that goes to the publisher, and then you have the writer that has to deal with the publisher, and the publisher could be self-published, right? So there's, there's a lot that goes more into this, and especially when you're talking about, films, and music is in films. But whatever the case is, good luck. I hope that Terrence Howard does get compensated for his creative process in this film.
yeah, 12,000 is just ridiculously low. But that's why, also have to be cognizant of the contracts that you're signing, but they do take advantage of, people green in the game.
Yep. Wall Street indexes rise slightly. Traders assess Fed comments. Wall Street's three main stock indexes edged higher on Friday as investors digested recent gains, while remarks from Federal Reserve officials clouded the outlook about when the U.S. Central Bank might start cutting interest rates. Vice Chair for Supervision Michael Barr said he believes the Fed is at or near the peak of interest rate hikes, but San Francisco Fed Chief Mary Daly and Boston Fed President Susan Collins highlighted the need for more evidence of cooling inflation. Adding some pressure, shares of Applied Materials, AMATO, tumbled 4.4% after its third quarter report, and news the U.S. Justice Department is investigating allegations that the semiconductor equipment maker violated export curbs to China. The 10-year Treasury note yield was down slightly after touching a 2-month low during the session. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and the Dow were poised for weekly gains of more than 2%, their third straight week of gains.
Amazon Prime's new $9 primary care subscription undercuts Amazon's other health services. I was not even aware that Amazon had health services, but let's see what this is about. Amazon unveiled its latest healthcare play on Wednesday, offering steeply discounted memberships to the One Medical, the primary care company it acquired this year for $3.5 billion, to its tens of millions of Amazon Prime US customers. It's another in a series of experiments by the retail behemoth to carve out off a slice of the $4.3 trillion US healthcare market. But it also appears to be competing against some of Amazon's other health offerings, which could complicate its strategy to become a major healthcare player. The current list price for a One Medical membership is $199, which gets a person access to unlimited 24/7 virtual visits. The new Prime benefit is around half off with one medical memberships for $99 a year or $9 a month for the primary user. Additional family members are $66 extra each per year or $6 per month. In-person visits to One Medical, hundreds of clinics locations are charged through insurance or out of pocket. Compare that to Amazon's Clinic, a marketplace the company launched a year ago where customers can have text visits or video visits with doctors. A Forbes analyst in August found those one-time visits could range in price from $30 to $95 depending on the condition and whether it was via text or video. This means that an annual One Medical membership could be close to the price of some Amazon Clinic visits, though clinic pricing is dynamic and can change based on availability. At the time of writing this, most chat-based visits were around $30, but a video visit for a skin rash would be priced at $85.
$85 for a skin rash
Visit.
Man, just put some tussin on it. You'll be all right.
So I don't understand. So does this $99 One Medical membership? It said you still pay out of pocket or it's charged through insurance if you go into charged to what insurance? Your One Medical membership insurance?
Yeah, this sounds like confusing and probably need to look more deeper into this because that sounds just like a cluster.
Yeah, so but if it could be a viable option for people who don't have health insurance, something to look into.
Gavin Newsom slammed for only cleaning up San Francisco for Xi Jinping. California Governor Gavin Newsom has come under fire after admitting that San Francisco was cleaned up ahead of the arrival of fancy leaders for the annual Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Leaders Summit. San Francisco is hosting the summit, which opens Saturday and runs through Friday. The main event is a planned meeting between President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the summit. In the days leading up to the event, homeless encampments in the city's downtown were cleared, sidewalks were polished, graffiti was scrubbed away, and murals and decorative crosswalks were added to busy areas. At a press conference on Thursday, Newsom acknowledged that the cleanup efforts were timed to coincide with the arrival of fancy leaders to San Francisco, which has been struggling to shed its image as a city in decline. Quote, I know folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true because it is true, end quote. Newsom said, quote, but it's also true for months and months and months prior to APEC. We've been having different conversations and we've raised the bar of expectations between the city, the county, and the state and our federal partners as well, that we all have to do more and do better, end quote.
Yeah, do better. Keep it clean every day.
Every day.
Yeah, it's really shameful what's happened out there in San Francisco.
All in California, really.
Yeah, all of California, really. But it kind of seemed like, well, LA has always been that way, but it seems like San Francisco, really led the way on this.
Yeah, I mean, LA, unfortunately, has always been kind of
transplant city.
Yeah, let's just call it that. And when I was living in LA, it just got worse. Every year that I was living there, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse until it is right now. I mean, it's horrible encampments there. Like, I mean, people living under bridges. Um, I mean, just anywhere people can go to live. You know, people are in these encampments. I mean, Skid Row has always been kind of bad, but it's like horrible now. Um, so yeah, and then San Francisco, you know, obviously, and Oakland, and also here in Sacramento,
Yeah.
which are I would say the four main cities. Obviously, you have more cities down the Bay Area too as well, but and maybe just the Bay Area in general, even outside of San Francisco, is just atrocious. So that's where we're at.
Well, we know now that it can be done, so let's start keeping those streets clean. Elderly woman pushed to leave Alabama home potentially worth $20 million after relatives sell property. An 84-year-old woman never attempted to purchase the property by the court's deadline because she thought she already owned it. Now it's too late to try. Kareem Woodson, 84, who has lived at her property in Alabama for 60 years, is being forced out of her home by family members and investors as they sell the 40.7-acre farm. Woodson's family members sold 49% of the Auburn, Alabama property to Cleveland Brothers Incorporated, according to the Daily Mail. The land located on Hamilton Road has risen in value since the purchase more than 100 years ago by her husband's family. The property, which was left to dozens, including 23 great-grandchildren of the original owner, may now be worth nearly $20 million. The luxury developers build in the area and the Auburn University College town evolves, or as luxury developers build in the area. Woodson is being forced to move from her longtime residence since the land is divided by percentage ownership rather than into parcels. The scheme, called Tenants in Common, forces everyone to sell if one owner decides to sell. The family has spent decades fighting over the property. In 2018, Al.com reported that Dr., the youngest son of Ben Woodson, who is the grandson of the patriarch Ben W. Woodson, tended to the property for the family. Ben W. purchased the property on January 2nd, 1911, after Ben and his wife Alice died without a will. Doctors allegedly tricked members of the family to sign over their 4.1-acre ownership to him in 1960s. Quote, "Our position is that the siblings were under a mistake of fact when they signed the deed," said Yeshuba Glenn Blankard, attorney for Dorothy Burgess, another great-grandchild of Ben W. "He was like, sign over to me and I'll hand you the deed for your portion after. That was the vessel that got that he used to get their trust, but he was tricking them and hoping to get a profit. He was hoping that they would forget about it, the deed, or die off, and that time he could dispose of the land how he wanted to." Cleveland Brothers purchased 4.1 acres in 2005 from two of Woodson's in-laws, Mary and Catherine, the Daily Mail reported. The purchase for the property averaged $150,000. For the two properties, averaged $150,000. The company has continued to purchase percentages of land from other relatives over time, which resulted in the 49% ownership.
Wow.
Now, I know from personal experience that this system, is, like they said, they called it a scheme. But it really needs to be overhauled in dealing with Southern lands. Like they said, if a parcel of land splits, it can go out to you know, dozens of family members, and everybody has just a little sliver. And as the article said, if one person sells it, helps these developers to, force other members to sell, even though they might not be interested in doing so.
Yeah, this is a problem.
It
I
is.
mean, on it's systemic, but it's also a family issue, right? Families need to be more united, and
They
and if
do,
they
but I
can,
mean, given our history and the Great Migration, I mean, I've talked to you. I mean, we recently, I would say in 2020, had a parcel of land divided up in this manner from a relative who passed away without a will, like they said, and it split between 80 family members. So they don't give you any of the information. These companies, these developer companies or leasing companies, whatever they are, don't give you any information on how to contact these relatives. Now, they did send on the letter everybody's address. That's how I was able to get in contact with the family, because one of our elderly family members sat down and wrote a letter to everybody on that list. 80 family members sent out a letter and, hoped that people would respond. And I was one of the few that responded, but other family members have not responded. So a lot of times you have no way of even knowing who these people are. I contacted the company and I said, hey, uh, could you provide the phone numbers, along with these family members and addresses? They had called me previously about something. So I was like, you have my phone number. So I know you've got everybody else's phone number. So how about giving the phone number? So I'm just saying that there needs to be, like I said, some kind of overhaul, some kind of checks and balances or something where at least they provide you with information on how to reach these phantom family members. I mean, we're spread out all over the country. So it's very difficult process, and they use it to steal people's land all the time.
yeah, I mean, I could see where it is a frustrating situation. That's period point blank. However, when people are aware of it at that particular time, then people need to go lockstep. I mean, I don't know what to say. If people, one person doing their own thing and everybody's doing their own thing, then that's when the land gets lost. I mean,
Right. I mean, but that's how
uh,
the system is designed to work that way. You know what I'm saying? They need an overhaul of this system. They need to do something else. This is not working because this keeps happening over and over again. Marcel for Congress, anybody who knows him on Twitter, he talks about these heirs property issues quite often. So this is something that's happening quite a bit. And it's, like you said, systemic. There needs to be an overhaul to the system. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And then even if you
yeah,
do try, because like I said, a lot of us are not down south anymore. So when it is time to draw up a succession, you're like dependent on these attorneys out of Louisiana. They are, many of them, are in on the grift, and they do things to undermine you getting your paperwork in order and getting your paperwork straight. So I mean, there needs to be some kind of intervention at the government level for this heirs property issue. Mhm.
yep. All right, so looks like we keep skipping this one. I don't know. Can you see the Chicago?
No.
Okay. Well, I'll read the Chicago one, and then I'll read the Chicago one, and then I'll there's a video
Okay,
for it. So
let's do it.
let's do it. And then I think you got the Van Jones one. So
All
all
right.
right. Nearly 3.5 years ago, Chicago officials. Well, let me read the title. Let me rewind. Push for reparations in Chicago gets new life as Johnson, which is the mayor of Chicago, earmarks $500,000 for new panel. Nearly 3.5 years ago, Chicago officials, spurred in part by the demands for racial justice that swept the nation in the wake of the police murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, promised to study whether and how the city would pay reparations to Chicagoans who are the descendants of enslaved African Americans. That effort never got off the ground. But that push will get new life next year with Mayor Brandon Johnson backing the creation of a new subcommittee to study the issue and agreeing to earmark $500,000 in his 2024 spending plan to fund the panel's work. These are the first dollars spent in the city to begin the process of studying both restoration and reparations, Johnson said. When residents who have experienced neglect and disinvestment for generations speak out of their pain and their trauma, this administration and the Black Caucus, we hear you. Alderman Stephanie Coleman, 16th Ward, the chair of the Chicago City Council's Black Caucus, said the subcommittee is likely to be part of the City Council's Committee on Contracting Equity and Oversight, which is led by the Alderman Emma Mitts of the 37th Ward. That panel will meet for no more than a year and then transition to a full commission, Coleman told WTTW News. Quote, "We are laying the groundwork," end quote, "to do more than just talk about the issue," Coleman said. So we have a video. It's actually not related to the reparations, but it's actually related to the budget that I guess Chicago approved. So let's go ahead and see what the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, has to say.
Implementing a tiered 60-day shelter stay limit combined with robust case management and workforce access to move new arrivals through our system to self-sufficiency and economic stability. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. At some point, I will acknowledge all of our alders that are here with us today, but I'm grateful to be joined by my colleagues. This is a great day for the city of Chicago as we pass the 2024 budget and truly begin the work of investing in our people and all of our communities. We would not be here without the hard work and commitment and the talent of our budget director, Annette Guzman, the Office of Budget Management, our comptroller, Chase Redwinkle, and our Chief Financial Officer, Jill Jarowski.
So, yep, looks like they always got money for everything else.
Everything else, and $500,000 towards this reparations. But the main thing, importantly, people need to get involved. They need to show up at these commissions. They need to be heard. So hopefully it's a opportunity for Chicagoans to give their testimony, even though I know we're all tired of studies. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Van Jones ridiculed for speech at March for Israel. Rally booed by crowd over call for ceasefire. Political pundit Van Jones was in hot water when he spoke before a crowd gathered in Washington, D.C. on November 14th in support of Israel amid the ongoing conflict in the West Bank. In addition to being booed by those at the march after he expressed the need for a ceasefire, Jones was also openly ridiculed on social media by those who felt his presence and words put him on the wrong side of history, Newsweek reports. Jones attributed his willingness to speak at the march to the Jewish community's support of Black people during the Civil Rights era. Soon after the speech began circulating an old clip that captures a young Jones rocking dreadlocks and addressing a crowd about the atrocities enacted on Black people in the U.S. government made its rounds on social media, with many pointing out the irony of his words. Let's take a look at what he had to say in 93.
Now, if students can do that in 1960, if students can do that in 1970, if students can do that in 1985 and 86, in 1993, when we have the United States government building a death camp, a concentration camp for black people who have done nothing wrong but get sick and want justice. That's all they've done wrong. If we can't close that death camp, if this generation cannot prevent another Japanese American internment in our lifetime, we should all get haircuts and go get regular jobs and give it up.
I guess he took his own advice.
Yep.
Cut his hair, got a regular job, and gave up. Many felt that Jones' new position in support of Israel's decades-long war in Palestinians, inferred by his willingness to appear at the rally, was a direct opposition to his stance earlier in his life and political career. Others saw his speech at the March for Israel as another instance of his attempt to appeal to both sides of the controversial issue.
For Israel, ceasefire. Interesting.
Well, Israel to ceasefire in Gaza, so.
Yeah, Van Jones, that brother sometimes is all over the map. We don't know what he's talking about. I mean, that was just ridiculous what he said. Let's just all go, what? Why would you?
Is that what we need to do?
Cut our hair and get jobs? I mean, what does that have to do? I mean, that's the whole thing, right? It's like, cut your hair and get jobs. Bro, you got work anyway. I mean, you know what I mean? So what are you talking about, bro? What are you talking about anyway?
Well, it sounds like he was talking about if the activism is not being effective, it's time to give it up and just assimilate into society. But we're not gonna, we're gonna keep that, spirit of continuing on in our activism for sure.
Yeah. No, I understood what he was talking about. However, like it's just ridiculous. Oh, there's cut your hair and get. Who would say that? Like, nobody cares about that, bro. Just either you're for something or you're against, regardless if you're working or not. You know what I mean? If you're an advocate or you're not. Just ridiculous. And then people clap for him. Oh yeah, woohoo! He said something spectacular.
Well, conforming certainly has worked in his favor. Being
it sure has.
Given $100 million by Bezos, and seems to be living a comfortable life.
Cut his hair, I should say, and they did cut him the check, but we need the check cut for Black American descendants for reparations.
Absolutely. I don't even know if Van Jones fella has ever even spoken out on reparations. Has he, to your knowledge?
I have no idea. So don't get me saying anything. So I have no idea.
Maybe we'll have to research that, see what his stance is on reparations. And I think that's it for In the News for this November 17th, 2023. Yep.
So let's actually talk about this upcoming Sunday and the ARCC event. Let's go ahead and pull these up. So this Sunday, we're actually going to be postponing the Road to Reparations community show. And hopefully we'll be maybe coming back the next week. I don't know. The next week is Thanksgiving, but I'm pretty sure we're actually going to be having the Blacklisted watch and sip. And then we might actually have, talk about whatever we're going to talk about, including with the Blacklisted re-premiere on ETN Media Group right here on YouTube. So This Sunday, upcoming Sunday, is definitely going to be postponed, but we'll put that in our community tab. We'll put that on social media. But for those who do follow the Sundays at 10 a.m. On live, on replay, we really appreciate your support in our efforts to get reparations here in California. And one of the reasons why we are postponing it, because we have our good comrade, Darlene, who's in the ARCC, which they did appear right here on ETN Media Group. You have Josiah, Carol, and Shanna, who are the current main leaders of the ARCC Bay Area, along with Darlene, are going to have their volunteer session at the Oakland Library from Sunday, November 9th. Sunday at 2:30 to 4:30, November 19th, once again at the Oakland Library.
Yeah, so if you're in the Bay Area, Oakland area, you want to learn more about getting involved with reparations here in California and helping us push for legislation in the upcoming legislation cycle, please stop by Sunday, November 19th, 2:30 to 4:30 at the 81st Avenue Library in East Oakland.
Absolutely. So on that note, everybody have a wonderful weekend, and we'll be seeing you later. As always, peace and reparations.